The reason why a locker room or baseball, what we'll oftentimes call a clubhouse, is like real life, or I like to say like any office, is that I think there might be a perception that you just have a bunch of athletes in there. And yes, they are all athletes. And in baseball, I think like football, you got all shapes and sizes. And, basketball, I guess, is all heights. But, and you can walk into a baseball clubhouse and, you got tall guys, short guys, heavier guys. They're, guys that look like they could be running in the Olympics and track, and guys that look like they could be shot putters. And but more so than that, different backgrounds. You got Americans in there, some that grew up in rural America, some that grew up in cities, some that grew up in suburbs. You got Venezuelans, you got Dominicans, usually both Dominicans and Venezuelans. On our team, a very heavy Venezuelan influence. Oftentimes Puerto Ricans, Mexicans, you might have Japanese in there, Panamanian. And so you have this melting pot with a bunch of guys that the one commonality is baseball. But within there, some of them may not love the game the way others do. Some loved it from the day they were born. Others may be doing it because they're really good at it, but it's not their favorite thing. I mean, that sounds crazy, but it is. Let's take it a step further. You got big personalities. You got quiet personalities. You got a guy that you might see in the corner reading a book. Oftentimes you walk into a clubhouse and almost everybody's sitting scrolling through their phones. That sounds familiar, doesn't it? They're no different than anyone else. You said something about just being people. People are people, and they might have a couple more zeros or many more zeros in their, in their paychecks than many of us have. Guess what? They're still going home to issues. They're still going home to a sick child or a sick parent, or maybe they're not getting along with a spouse or a significant other, or maybe there's some kind of financial issues regardless of what they're making, or maybe they're suffering from mental health. Like they're not immune from any of this.
This is the Play Your Position podcast, where we huddle up, call the plays, and inspire you to run your ball into the end zone. Are you ready to score more game-winning touchdowns in your life, business, and career? Then listen up, because it's game time, baby. Now, here's your host, Mary Lou Kaiser.
Hello, Team PYP. Welcome to the Play Your Position podcast, a show that explores leadership, authenticity, and doing what makes you feel most alive. I'm your host, Mary Lou Kaiser, author of The River Only Runs One Way and The Far Unlit Unknown, 2 books available right now at your favorite online book retailer. Make them your companions on the next leg of your leadership journey. Also, the launch of my latest book, It's Not You, It's the Algorithm, is getting closer. Follow me on my Substack handle, gobeyondthescroll.com, to stay in the loop about everything I'm doing, including the book launch. That's gobeyondthescroll.com and hit subscribe. It's totally free and lots of good stuff is going on over there. All right, on to today's conversation. I'm excited about my guest today. A mutual connection introduced us, which goes to show how powerful and essential building relationships is to moving forward today. His name is Joel Goldberg, and he not only embodies the fundamental principles of this podcast, but he's also an exceptional human who values depth over hot takes and authentic conversation over sound bites. He is a sports fan like I am and makes his living as a broadcaster with the Kansas City Royals baseball franchise. And oh yeah, he won an Emmy for his journalism work, which is pretty awesome. We definitely round the bases together, diving into how trust, authenticity, and purpose can transform your professional journey, whether you're in media, sports, or any field. Joel shares candid insights about navigating generational differences, maintaining integrity in a fast-paced digital world, and finding your true calling. This episode is a playbook for anyone seeking to understand leadership beyond titles. revealing how making others better is the ultimate measure of success. Perfect for professionals, aspiring leaders, and anyone looking to reinvent themselves with purpose and passion. You can find Joel on LinkedIn, on his podcast, which is amazing, and his website. Links to connect with him are in the show notes, as always. And when you connect, let him know you heard him here on the Play Your Position podcast. All right, team. Are you ready to knock it out of the park? I know I am. Let's go. So, Joel, you and I were just discussing the whole podcasting scene and the broadcasting scene, and this is something that you have done professionally for many, many years. And before we get into the heart of your story with what you do in baseball and other parts of your life, let's have you share your story about when you first got the call to leadership. How old were you? Do you remember what was going on in your life at the time? And then fast forward to what you are doing today and connect those dots if they're connectable. Sometimes they're not.
Yeah, I think in this case, Mary Lou, they're all connectable. And thanks for having me on. And this is a good question because I don't know that there's a moment per se. I mean, in some ways, we're all leaders to some extent. But I don't know. I've been on TV for 30 plus years, and there's certainly a good chunk of those years where I didn't think of myself as a leader. I might have thought of myself, and I don't mean to make it sound superficial, as the guy that, hey, people know who you are because you're on TV. And so that gives you some extra clout and a platform. But I don't know that that makes you a leader. Mm-hmm. I think that there are just some moments where I understood that with that platform came influence. And I'm not talking about the day and age we live in now where everybody wants to be an influencer, which, by the way, we were capable of being influencers when we grew up too. It just wasn't on social media and there were different ways to do it, right? But I think the ultimate influencer is someone that can lead. And I think I started to understand, I don't know, maybe 10, 12 years ago in my television work that there were people whose lives I was impacting beyond just, hey, we love your work. Hey, we love watching you guys. Hey, that was a great game. Hey, that was a fun interview. But when I started hearing from people overseas, stationed overseas, serving our country, sending messages via social media saying, hey, I watched the game last night and I loved, it was so great to get a piece of home. What a great game. And I thought, well, they lost 13-0 and there was a 3-hour rain delay. It was kind of a miserable night. Wait a minute. The work that I did was seen and impacting someone in the Middle East, or a message, my grandmother is in hospice and the only thing she wants to do in her final days is watch you guys. And so that's when I understood that. And I think that's probably a better answer to the question of purpose than leadership. But I think it all kind of came together because that's when I understood that my work with a deeper purpose gave me an elevated platform to be able to impact people's lives. The speaking and everything else kind of came afterwards. But I think that that's what enabled me to realize, wait a minute here, in a silly way, just because I'm on TV and I'm seen by a lot of people, that I can really make an impact. And by making an impact, maybe I can help lead and do some good.
So how do you define leadership, Joel? It's such an interesting word, isn't it? It gets tossed around all the time. And there is that risk of the superficiality of leadership, that just because you have a role or a title and, you're around professional athletes and because they're so good at what they do, really anybody who's really good at what they do, I think there's a perception by those who aren't like that, oh, they automatically are a leader. And you and I both know that's not necessarily true.
No, and there are different forms of leadership and different styles of leadership. I love that. I mean, like my role in TV, in being a host and a reporter and embedded with a team and traveling with them means that I have had the opportunity for all of my career to essentially ride shotgun and watch all these different leadership styles, and the hands-on leader and the more laid-back leader, and the pendulum swings. When one guy gets fired or moves on, the next one is usually the opposite, right? And that's true in sports. That's true in everything. And so I think there are a couple things to this question, because I do view myself as a leader, yet I don't think I'm ever going to lead a company. I don't think I'm ever going to lead a team. I think I lead in different ways. And I don't I don't know that I'm cut out to do that either. But I think maybe in the simplest form, leadership is someone that makes someone or something better, and it's their goal to make those better. So for me, whether it's my speaking job, whether it's the people watching our broadcasts, whether it's the podcasts, whether it's, and I look at doing this long enough now, I find that a lot of the people that I work around, a lot of the rest of the media, or even some of the players, they were kids when I started doing this. And I feel like I have a lot of experience to share. Yeah. And I just in the last couple of years, Mary Lou, I find people coming up to me and asking my advice more. And that's really gratifying. And that to me makes me feel like a leader, because if I have the opportunity through my experiences or perspective to help make them or a situation better, I think that's leadership. And leaders connect dots. We talked about connecting dots. Speakers connect dots. And that's what makes people better. That we're oftentimes, at least in my role, I might be the outside observer, or at least not emotionally tied to it and able to help people in that way. So I think that's leadership, at least for me, in the way it works for me.
What are they asking you when they come to you?
Oh, gosh, it could be anything. Now, first off, I'll make it clear, like, players typically aren't going to come and ask me for advice, nor should they. And I do I hope a decent job of trying to take down that barrier of player versus media. I'm not really your typical media being embedded with the team. I'm not an employee of the team, but I'm a business partner of the team, essentially. Okay. And I know everything's relationship based for me. But I'll get a lot of young, whether it be reporters or writers, or who are reporters too, come up and say, "Hey, I got this little something going on. How would you handle this?" And a lot of time it's sensitive information. One just came up the other day, and I know where they're at. I know first and foremost that the fact that they want to ask me something that's very confidential means that they trust that, first off, I'm not going to take that information and leak it or run with it or try to break it as my own. That might not work, by the way, in a lot of markets or a lot of places. But I learned a long time ago. I mean, I have a news background before I got into the game broadcasts. And in those situations, you did whatever you could to break the story. And you were the hero if you broke it. They're not asking me to do that. That's not my role. And once I understood that, I'm there to inform people, entertain people, keep people up to date, and do everything by building these relationships and building the trust, that I don't need to be the one to break it. And so when another reporter or someone comes up to me and says, "Hey, I've got this sensitive whatever," and inevitably they're going to say, "Hey, we really need to, I can't let this get out there." And I'll almost cut them off before they say it and say, "I'm not going anywhere with this. How can I help you?" And I just that's very fulfilling to me. And, I also think that the more people trust me and the more that they're willing to share those things with me, not only can I help them, but I generally tend to be more informed. I just have a lot of people that tell me a lot of things that help shape the way that I report. And really it helps me if I'm not going to be the one to break the story. If I ever get back into that role, I'll break the story. But at this point, I want to make sure that I'm always barking up the right tree. I tell people all the time when I'm building trust with them, even players too, coaches, help me not chase the wrong thing.
Ooh, I like that.
Because if you're going to come to me later and say, "You are so off on that," you got a chance to steer me in the right direction. And, I'm getting off track here a little bit, but...
No, you're not. You're not.
That's the beauty of the organic conversation, right? And the tangents that the world that we live in. But, almost every day I need to talk to the Kansas City Royals, the team I cover, the team trainer, the head trainer. And not every day, but in baseball, there are going to be injuries and things that pop up every day. And we've built up enough of a rapport, not enough, a great rapport, where I know he's going to give me more than the press release. He's going to give me context, details, but I also know where not to push him. And when we find that happy medium, I always believe that I'm going to get more information and be able to provide more detail in a very digestible way, because most of us aren't doctors, myself included. But I also know how not to, how to represent him in a good way and he to represent me in a good way. And so that's where all this goes. The credibility, the trust, everything that we do is rooted in trust.
Yes.
And that, I believe, that's part of leadership too. There might be some leaders that disagree, and hey, I'm gonna be that dictator type, and it's my way or the highway, or there might be the micromanager, and that might be their personality. Whatever it is, it's not my style. But I think that as a leader, if you can build trust, you can do just about anything.
Yeah, and I'm hearing you also, without saying these words, you're talking about discernment, knowing how far you can go and where you draw the line. I hear confidentiality is a big part of things because at the end of the day, we're all humans. It doesn't matter what role you are playing, what position you are playing, you are still a human being doing your best to operate in a very complicated, demanding world, especially in the industry that you're in, where the spotlight is constantly on you and every move you make with social media, now the expectation, and then you've got the TMZs who are always digging up for the dirt. And, there's so much that an athlete and also a media personality is seeing every single day and knowing what needs to not be shared, but also can be used to inform your storytelling, your ability to connect with an audience halfway across the world who happen to tune into that game that day. I think all plays into what being a leader is. And I have a follow-up question to that. When I was doing some reading about you, Joel, you said the locker room is a microcosm of life and business. What's something surprising that you've seen behind the scenes that translates into a leadership lesson?
Oh my gosh, there's so much. I mean, you see it every day. And the first thing I would say, there's a lot I want to say on this. The first thing I would say is the reason why a locker room or baseball, what we'll oftentimes call a clubhouse, is like real life, or I like to say like any office, is that I think there might be a perception that you just have a bunch of athletes in there. And yes, they are all athletes. And in baseball, I think like football, you got all shapes and sizes. And, basketball, I guess, is all heights. But, and you can walk into a baseball clubhouse and, you got tall guys, short guys, heavier guys. They're, guys that look like they could be running in the Olympics in track, and guys that look like they could be shot putters. And, but more so than that, different backgrounds. You got Americans in there, some that grew up in rural America, some that grew up in cities, some that grew up in suburbs. You got Venezuelans, you got Dominicans, usually both Dominicans and Venezuelans. On our team, a very heavy Venezuelan influence. Oftentimes Puerto Ricans, Mexicans, you might have Japanese in there, Panamanian. And so you have this melting pot with a bunch of guys that the one commonality is baseball. But within there, some of them may not love the game the way others do. Some loved it from the day they were born. Others may be doing it because they're really good at it, but it's not their favorite thing. I mean, that sounds crazy, but it is. Let's take it a step further. You got big personalities. You got quiet personalities. You got a guy that you might see in the corner reading a book. Oftentimes you walk into a clubhouse and almost everybody's sitting scrolling through their phones. That sounds familiar, doesn't it? They're no different than anyone else. You said something about just being people. People are people, and they might have a couple more zeros or many more zeros in their, in their paychecks than many of us have. Guess what? They're still going home to issues. They're still going home to a sick child or a sick parent, or maybe they're not getting along with a spouse or a significant other, or maybe there's some kind of financial issues regardless of what they're making, or maybe they're suffering from mental health. Like they're not immune from any of this. So that to me is why a baseball clubhouse is very representative of any other office. You got guys that are loud, you got guys that are quiet. I have seen, talk about leadership, I have seen every type of leader in terms of personality in there. One of the best leaders that I was around for many of my years here in Kansas City was the quiet lead by example type, and every single guy in that room wanted to make him happy and please him. And if and when, and because of my connections and the trust, then I wouldn't report this stuff, but I know there were times where he had to have a talk with a player, and it happened behind closed doors. And it might have even got a little animated for a guy that doesn't get very animated. But when he needed to do that, he did it.
Yeah.
I've seen other guys that I know will get in somebody's face as often as they need to over and over and over again because they're more intense. I have seen players right now. We've got a guy that's the leader of the team, and he's also turning 35 soon, which by baseball age is a little bit on the older side. And anyone would run through a wall for him. And he's probably somewhere in the middle. He's not laid back. He's a big personality, but he's not going to sit there yelling at people. But I think the biggest piece of leadership that I've seen is that these guys all understand. It's that expression or some form of this expression of something like praise publicly and whatever it is, yell at or criticize privately. And they're really good at keeping the criticism behind closed doors. They're really good. And the reason why I may be aware of it at times is that guys are willing to tell me some things. By the way, they don't tell me most. So, and I'm fine with that. I need to know what I need to know, and they need to protect what they need to protect. The leadership there. That's a sacred place. That's their home. That's their private home. That's their family. And the best leaders in there know how to keep that intact. And the best managers, and I've seen, I think 5 since I've been here, 4, and they've all been different. The best managers know how to rely on their best leaders to do it for them so that they don't have to do the micromanaging, that they don't have to do it. And it's the same thing for me too, Mary Lou. I know that if I have the respect and the trust of the top leaders in terms of the players, that'll filter to everybody else. But if I don't have them, I'm going to get nothing. So it starts there at the top and you work your way down.
So let's talk about trust, and let's talk about the theme of my show, which is playing your position. What do you do, Joel, to foster trust within yourself so that you know when you show up? Because you play different roles, and I want to get into reinvention in a minute because you have reinvented yourself.
Yeah.
And it's a topic that gets tossed around. But before, what are some ways that you reinforce trusting yourself so that you can then be trustworthy?
Okay, so not that I have it all figured out. I never will. We never will, right?
No,
but I feel like the longer we do this, and if we do it long enough, I think some of it's a muscle memory, and it's a reminder. I mean, the question of how do you build trust within yourself? I think it's trusting. If you have those, proverbial 2 different voices on either shoulder, right? I mean, what do we used to say, like the angel and the devil or something like that? So let's call the devil the imposter syndrome guy, the one that questions everything, right? Who oftentimes has the louder voice. And I'm not immune to that either. But I think when it comes time to everything in terms of television, how to go about building trust with these players, my place, my position on this team, so to speak, that I've done it long enough that I know how to make sure that the positive voice, the angel, wins the battle against the negative voice. So I trust that will always be the case. Maybe not always the case, but I trust that the muscle memory and the experience of doing this, which includes failure, includes when things don't go right, that have I experienced everything? No, but I've probably experienced some version of it. Whether that be a technical difficulty on television, a last minute change, something that doesn't go your way. There's very, very little that's going to panic me. And, in a very fast paced live television world. I mean, the game that I did last night as we're recording this all changed in a matter of 10 minutes in the final 10 minutes and
Really?
Where I was and how I reported it and who I talked to. Like it was all a flurry. In 15 minutes, I was in this place, then that place, then this place, then that place. And almost all the storylines in the game happened in the last 10 minutes.
Amazing.
In a crazy way.
Yeah.
And none of it, my heart rate never sped up. And so there's confidence in filing that away in the mind, in the memory bank of yet another instance of saying, and by the way, I make mistakes every day. It's live television.
Sure.
I'm not sitting here saying I have it all figured out. And you and I talked beforehand that we have a similar style in not being scripted and organic, which I think that the value you get in that, if you're comfortable with that, is a lot of authenticity. I think that when you're scripted, you have to work a little. It's not that you're not authentic, but I think you have to work a little bit harder to show your personality. But the danger of it is that you're going to make more mistakes. You just are. So I have comfort in that as well. And understanding that some mistakes are just mistakes, move on.
Mm-hmm.
And other mistakes are, wait, why did this happen? What can I learn from it? And I think that I have the ability in the moment, not to get the answer, but to understand whether it's worth pursuing in my mind or not. Because if you pursue it further in your mind, that's when that negative voice might creep in.
Yes.
And I just understand that most of those mistakes or most of those little moments are not moments I'm going to remember tomorrow. And so you just move on and chalk it up as part of the game. It's a swing and a miss at the plate.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not going to beat myself up over it. And so I think that you free yourself to be able to trust yourself more by not getting bogged down by that stuff. And when you do it over and over and over and over again, I didn't know what last night would look like and how it would finish. But my broadcast partner and I, being in one location, then having to get to another, and then if they win, I got to get back down to the field to do an interview and then get back up to our set for a show. I already had it mapped out in my head, even though I didn't know how it would happen in terms of the result, the game, the play. And it definitely was a play that I never would have expected, but I knew exactly how to react to it in the moment. And even to the point when the PR staff texted and said, "Hey, do you want this guy as your guest?" And I just immediately fired back, "Nope, I want him." Like I knew what I needed. And by the way, if he said, "Well, we can't do that," then I would have rolled with the punches and we would have moved on with it. To me, that's so fulfilling because there's no stress or anxiety in it. And the younger me would have been completely stressed by it. And that's fine. That was part of it. But I think that there's a lot of fulfillment and a lot of pride in the fact that I'm at this point where I don't need to waste the energy that I did before on that.
It's halftime here at the Play Your Position podcast, and we've got ourselves a great game. While you're up grabbing another snack and topping off your favorite beverage, make sure to subscribe to the show so you never miss another play. PYP is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever great podcasts can be found. Now, let's get back to the game.
So you bring up something really interesting. It's something I've thought a lot about recently, really in the last couple of years, is we are all now living in the internet/social media age where everybody from, it seems like a baby comes out and here's your cell phone, right? I mean, that's how it feels. And all the way up to people in their 80s and 90s are all engaging in this same ecosystem, right? And you're talking about how building trust within yourself has come over time. Like you can't hack your way. Like watch a YouTube video on building trust within yourself and okay, now I got it. It's like, it's boots on the ground. It's experience. It's having those failures. It's having what you thought was going to happen get shifted. For people who are either raising children now or young people who are listening to this, what kind of wisdom do you have now, Joel, that you can pass on about living in a time when we are exposed to, like I see 18-year-olds freaking out because they haven't figured out their life purpose yet. You and I didn't know that at 18. And yet there's this pressure on young people to have everything, like have lived a full life by the time they turn 20. And then older folks who are just coming into this are, from what I'm seeing, I'm getting this perception of, oh, I've wasted my whole life. There's no way I can go forward. And this is leading me into the whole reinvention question because you've done it. Let's start with, what's your wisdom here about managing this existence without, throwing your phone over a cliff? Like that's not realistic.
Yeah.
But it's also, it's a whole new set of skills, isn't it, for today?
It is. And I'll start here. Just you and I talking about this. You having the wisdom to ask it, me hopefully having the wisdom to answer it. Like this is a deep, heavy conversation. It's a deep, heavy question.
I know.
But I love the fact that, you and I are really just meeting. We had a great introduction through a mutual connection, Damon Lemby. But I'm feeling a lot of alignment with you, the way you go about asking questions and where your mind goes and the curiosity to respond to what you're hearing. We have a lot of similar styles to that. And so I find that there's a lot of purpose just in having this conversation. And I would have never thought about that in the past, right? Like that might be the influence of the younger generation that maybe is teaching us how to find purpose in everything you're doing. And so like I'm finding this conversation really engaging and fun and fulfilling. And like I could do this all day long. And we do a lot of others that aren't as fulfilling, right? And they're fine. I don't know that I would have thought that way in my 20s or my 30s. I mean, beyond the fact that we didn't have podcasts, like when were we having these conversations, Mary Lou? Like, I mean, maybe if you and I meet for coffee, we might dive into it a little bit, but we wouldn't have a conversation like this in an interview. So we're being influenced by the younger generation, I believe. There's a whole other discussion about generation in the workplace here, which I know is a hot topic, but it drives me nuts when our generation wants to discount Gen Z. By the way, I think we now overlook millennials for everything, but that's okay. I'm Gen X, and they overlooked.
I'm Gen X too,
right? They overlooked us forever, and our parents just,
they still overlook us. So, I mean, we're such a we're the tiniest generation.
We are.
But you're right. Like my daughter is at the bottom of millennials. My son is at the top of Gen Z, and so I've seen both things. But please continue. It's interesting.
I think that we have an obligation as leaders, I'll say Gen Xers. I would include boomers in this and maybe some older millennials. I give boomers a hall pass, by the way, if they want to give up on it and say the heck with it, they've earned that right. But I think that if we're still wanting to be relevant, first and foremost, I don't want to be left behind. So I need to understand what Gen Z is doing. For me personally, there's a lot of incentive there because when I got into this business and I was covering 20-something-year-old athletes, I was one of the 20-somethings. The difference between me and the athletes is I wasn't a good athlete, and they were. Then I was a 30-something, and they were 20s. Then I was a 40-something. Now I'm a 50-something, and they're 20-somethings still. 20-somethings and 30-somethings. They're not coming to me to figure it out. I better go to them. So first and foremost, if I can go and learn from them, I might be a little better at what I do. And if that gives me a different understanding of purpose, great. But I also think that they're going to learn from us, and they're willing to learn from us if we show a little interest in them.
Yes. Amen.
The completely overused expression of meet people where they are is exactly what applies here. And they're not going to meet us where we are because they don't necessarily know how to do that. But if we meet them where they're at, they'll come to us. And so that's something that I'm working on every single day. I really am. And then I think instead of lamenting the fact that we missed our purpose, it's never too late to start to find it. And when you find it, it's incredibly re-energizing. You talk about reinvention. I mean, I think I found my reinvention in my 40s, in my mid 40s, and I feel like I'm just starting something new while still doing everything old that I did with a different perspective now. It's never too late. I mean, I don't care if you're in your final days of life. If you could find fulfillment in those final couple of days, if you could find purpose in those final couple of days or peace, then that's a victory right there. And any day you find something a little bit deeper, to me, is victory, because we're all moving too fast, myself included. I still want to scroll all the time on my social media, and I still want to check out and not think about anything. And I like to do that kind of stuff. And then at the end, I wonder why I wasted all my time. But maybe that recharges me to be able to go out there and do everything else that I'm doing. I don't know. But I think that whatever generation we're in, we need to be more present. We need to be more aware, more curious, more on the search. If you're looking for it and you're open to it, this isn't like, when you're young and you're dating and they say, well, if you're looking for it, you're never going to find it. It always happens when you're not looking for it, like one of those type of things. No, I think that if you're present and your eyes and your ears are open, you're going to find some of this purpose. But to your point before, I think that younger generation is so fixated on it that it becomes a lot of pressure.
Yeah, that's what I'm seeing is there's a lot of anxiety around it that they're like, I haven't figured it out. And I just saw a video on Gary Vaynerchuk. I don't know if you know who he is, Gary V, but he was talking to a 23-year-old who was all freaked out about, I don't have this figured out. And Gary's just laughing at him like, dude, You're not supposed to, and he was going through his whole thing. But ultimately, the message of that video was about wasted time. Like the kid was saying, I feel like I'm wasting all my time. And Gary's response is there's no such thing as wasted time because
Yeah,
you're either excelling at something and achieving something, or if it didn't work out, it was an experiment and you learned from it. No waste.
yes.
Yeah, no waste.
I just had this. I just had this discussion with my college daughter. I don't know, it was last month or so, and she's looking for a summer job, and she had her hopes up on this one thing, but she didn't think she was going to get it. And I just said, whatever happens, it's take it as a good experience. And she didn't get it, and then she's all bummed out. And I've had all these losses in a row, and I need a win. And I said, how do you know it was a loss? And I did not expect her to fully grasp that. She's a smart kid and hard worker and all the stuff I could brag about her, of course. But I didn't expect her to fully grasp that in the moment, because I don't know if I could grasp it in the moment either. I don't know if I'm that good when it's just me. And certainly, her going through it is as close as I could go through it. I mean, it's my daughter. But I just tried to tell her, I'm like, and she said something like, well, they sent me, an email saying that they're going a different direction. Should I respond? I'm like, absolutely, you should respond. You respond and you tell her thank you for the opportunity, wish her luck with the hire that she made, ask her if it's okay to keep in touch, and you'd love to keep in touch, and maybe there's some opportunities in the future. And so she sent it, and the woman sent back to her, well, I would expect and hope that you do. And I thought about a couple of things in that moment. I thought, now, at her age, I think I knew how to do that. But now this is a difference in generations, and they're not as used to putting themselves out there. And to me, that was an opportunity for her to start building trust in a relationship that could serve her in the future. And that could be a blueprint and a model for everything else she does. And I think, I think she'll get that. But to me, that's part of the victory in it, is that you just gave yourself a chance to build a relationship so that when the next time comes around, they have a better idea of who you are.
Yeah. I love that story for a couple of reasons. One, you were there for her, and you didn't rescue her from her pain. You didn't try to take it away or step in the way a lot of parents are doing now. Like, I've read that now parents are of college age, your daughter's age, are calling up professors. When did this start happening?
Yeah.
Like, what is happening with this? And it's all based in fear. At the end of the day, everything is my kid isn't going to make it. I did something wrong. Whatever the narrative is going on in their head. So, really, I acknowledge you as a father. It's not easy to raise children. Anybody who's listening to this who has either raised their children, even when they're adults, they need you still differently. They don't need you the way they did when they were 8 or 12 or 18. They need you differently. And they do need us as parents to admit when we made mistakes, to be human, to show that we're fallible too. We didn't always have all the answers. We stumbled around, and we're better for it, right? So it's a great story, Joel. And thank you for sharing that. So I have a question for you that kind of a curveball here. You are known for asking great questions on your podcast and in your interviews. What's one question you still haven't figured out how to ask well?
I don't know, but I just figured out one question I don't have the answer to. What you
That's
just
fair.
asked me.
That's fair.
I hate the answer I'm about to give, but I'll explain it. Because one of the only 3 scripted questions I ask my guests, and it was just meant to be, a little bit cutesy. I'm not too cutesy with my stuff. I don't like catchphrases. I'm pretty straightforward with my sometimes dumb or silly sense of humor, dad joke type of stuff. But I ask all my guests, what's the biggest home run you've hit professionally? What's the biggest swing and miss you've taken? And what is small ball, which became part of the title of both my books, The Little Things That Add Up to the Big Results. And the answers have been great with that. And every now and then I'll get some guests that I don't remember who, and I'm not trying to put anybody down, but they'll say, well, I can't think of any swings and misses. And I'm like, oh, come on. Like everybody's had a swing and miss.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if it's just like they can't think of a big moment or it's trying to be confident, whatever it is. And so now I feel like I'm going to give you that answer that I don't know. But I want to at least add some value to my answer because there's been none yet so far. And that would be that I really believe that if you are curious and you go about it the right way, you talked a little bit earlier about just kind of knowing, right, when, where, right, wrong, having the feel of what I think a lot of us like to call reading the room. I wrote a chapter in my first book on reading the room. I believe part of the reason why I've been in this business so long is one, how I treat people, and two, reading the room. If you understand the right time and the wrong time, and you stay most of the time on the right side of that, people will come back to you and respect you and give you what you need. But if you're hitting them at the wrong time, they're going to run the other direction. So there's a lot of reading the room, reading body language, understanding. Don't put people in a position to say no or be uncomfortable. And so it's a long way of me saying that there's not a question I haven't figured out how to ask, because I think that I understand the right way to ask it. I might not get it right every time, but I think that this is just kind of 101 for me. But if you lead with the simple words of what, why, or how, the when, where, and who might be details. But if you start whatever that question is with what or why or how, you're probably going to get to the answer. And it can be a sensitive topic as well. But I'm going to go back to something I said before, too, that I think that there's no question that's been difficult for me, because if you have the trust or just even a little bit of rapport with someone, I mean, you and I'm saying something without knowing you that I think you'll agree with, that you and I, 40 minutes in, have more of a rapport right now than we did 35 minutes ago, right? Like I've got a better feel of who you are and vice versa. And I already had a good feeling based on looking at your website and then the person that connected us that I was sure this would be good. But that can happen quickly. And if you build that trust and you build that rapport, there's no reason really to fear anything, along with the fact that I'm going to trust that you're not going to put me in a really tough spot. Or if you've got a really sensitive topic to ask me, that if you're a pro at this, you're going to put me in a position to answer it well. And so to me, there's really no fear in that. If there's something I'm a little bit uncertain about, then I'm gonna mention it in advance. Hey, are you comfortable with me going here? Or or how so? And I think it's a communication thing. So it's not that I can't think of something. I've had plenty of bad questions, and I've had plenty of bad moments. But I don't think that there's anything that I'm really afraid of asking.
Yeah, that's a wonderful answer, and thank you. When I came up with that question, I was asking that of myself, and I was thinking about, wow, over the last 11 years and how many people I've talked to, and there sometimes comes a moment during a conversation, which I'm sure you've had many times, where the guest took you into sensitive, vulnerable territory, and you just either in that moment decide, I'm going to go a little bit further because I sense that I can, or you're going to back away because you're like, no. And one thing over the years of watching different television programs, I'm not necessarily talking about sports, although it's probably happened. I'm thinking more of these reality shows where the intent is to catch people off guard, to ask questions that are really mean-spirited, for lack of a better term, just to get the emotional reaction, because that's what drives the viewers. I mean, I don't know. I don't want to ask you about that. I'm more curious about what changes you have seen as just quickly in the sports world as a professional broadcaster, Joel. What's been a good change in it from your standpoint, and what are a couple of things that have disappeared that you're like, man, if we could just bring that back? Is there anything that comes to mind?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'll go back to my third job in television. I was working in St. Louis, And so this would have been like late 90s, early 2000s, local, television news, Fox television affiliate, doing sports. And I just remember a time, the reason why I mentioned there is it's like I can like remember that we would do the 10 o'clock news. We would always monitor the other TV stations and the newspapers and everything at that point was going online.
Right.
People were still getting the newspaper on their front step in their driveway, but all that content was also going online. And the local newspaper in St. Louis would take all the stories that they did and they would hold them back until 10:30 and the news was over so that they didn't want TV to steal them.
Interesting.
And instead they'd put up like an AP story or something. So it wasn't theirs, but it satisfied something. That's been the biggest change. And I mentioned that one because I think it's an interesting one because it's not just media and journalism, it's the whole world, is that if you're waiting, forget about hours, if you're waiting minutes to post something, you've already lost. So the speed of all of this has led to incredible inaccuracies, incredible mistakes. And the mistakes that are made nowadays would get you fired in the past. And then it became the mistakes that you make nowadays would lead to maybe an apology might save your job. And now the mistakes you make nowadays, you just move on to the next mistake.
Interesting.
There's no accountability.
Wow.
And so what it means is this whole world of social media that we're living in. I used to hate the fact that people blended social media and media together. Like if you write a blog or you're doing a podcast, that somehow you have the same clout as me. And I'm not saying they're just different.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that I'm better. It's different, but it's all blurred together. The lines have blurred together. I remember a point where columnists in newspapers started writing blogs. Or not a columnist, columnists have opinions anyway, but a beat writer, someone that was just covering the facts. Well, their bosses wanted them to write blogs because that's what was hot at the time and that's what was selling.
Yes.
Well, the blog was personal and it was opinion and the article was fact. Then the blogs were getting enough traction that they started putting those in the newspaper. And so what's what? And that's what's happened. And so for me, I think my answer is this. I'm going to stick true to who I am. I'm not giving that up, but I also need to know how to play in that world.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't have to be, for me though, it won't be with the inaccuracies. That's my reputation. And others can get away with it, but for me, it's fireable to be that bad and to be that wrong. And so I'm not going to budge on that. But there's also with the immediacy, like we have these iPhones now that
yes, we do.
When I got the iPhone 16 and I'm like, did I need to do the upgrade and spend all that money? Probably not. But now what I'm noticing is that the quality of video that I could shoot with that is sometimes better than the quality of stuff that we do with the television cameras we have.
Yes.
And I hand the phone to my producer and I bought a set of wireless lavalier microphones and you can plug the transmitter into the phone and my broadcast partner and I can go. And so we went to a scenic spot in Kansas City the day before the home opener and my producer with my phone and my broadcast partner and I opened the whole season standing in this gorgeous backdrop in downtown Kansas City that we would have never been able to do without hiring somebody and asking corporate to spend money on this. It didn't do anything. And it's like, so yes, we could find a way to make things better with the technology and in the immediacy of everything. I'm just not willing to sell my soul.
Yes. Beautiful. Yeah, I'm right there with you 100%. I'm not anti-tech. I'm not, down on stuff, but I think, again, going back to something you were talking about earlier when it comes to leadership, that discernment, how far, having a set of values from which you operate and knowing I've made a promise to myself, I am not going to go over here just to get that quick dopamine hit or
That's
because
right.
I broke it first. Oh, whoop-de-doo. No one's going to remember in 5 minutes.
No.
Because of speed, as you just were saying.
And I've got friends that have to break it. It's what they do.
Yep.
And I'm sure there's dopamine hits with it too. But I'm not in that role. And I would say, we talked about about purpose and fulfillment. And I could do those jobs too. I'm sure of it, but I'm where I want to be right now. Like I get to do things the way that represent who I am. And that's a very comforting position to be in.
Yes. I mean, it's the essence of playing your position. You
100%.
embody that. It's so awesome. It's so awesome.
You know what? Not all of us know what our position is, by the way, either.
No.
And so if you could find your position, once I found my position, it was like, wait a minute, this is pretty cool. Okay, now you can start to dig a little bit deeper in what that position does for you and for others.
Right. Well, speaking of what you can do for others, you've got a couple of books, you've got a podcast. Where do you hang out online, Joel? Where can people find your stuff?
I think that the one-stop shop is my website, which is joelgoldbergmedia.com. And I do a lot of speaking, a lot of motivational speaking. And I think, a lot of that motivational speaking is going to sound a lot like this conversation, rooted in some more stories.
Sure.
That are really meant to get people to think and feel emotion. But I think that everything that I'm doing now, from the speaking to the podcast to some of the baseball content, not as much of the baseball content because I got to be careful on the rights and what I can use.
Sure.
That's all on the website, joelgoldbergmedia.com. The podcast is Rounding the Bases, so that's out anywhere, and the books are on there. And so I 8 years ago, I was just a television broadcaster, and I say I hate that. I tell people all the time when they use the words just in front of their title, they're not just they're that, that's what you do. So when I say I was just a broadcaster, that's all I was, and it was great. And then when I stumbled into really accidentally that speaking could be a business, and that led to a podcast, which led to 2 books, which leads to all these appearances and talking to you. Like, I love the fact that I have come on this podcast with you and we haven't talked 1 second of baseball. And not that I dislike talking about baseball, but it's not all I am. And for a lot of years, it's all I was. And so that to me has been the best part. And so I think the website really is a one-stop shop and a representation of who I am beyond broadcasting and baseball.
Oh, well, it has been such a joy, Joel. You're a light in the world, and I am just honored that we got connected. Thank you to Damon Lemby, whose episode just dropped just a little bit ago. Wonderful human, doing great work in the world, as are you. And as a huge baseball fan, and also having some connections to Kansas City, I feel an affinity. I'm loving the season so far. I'm a New York Mets fan, and we're doing great so far. So
I was just going to ask you, are you a Mets or a Yankees fan?
I am Mets 100%.
I think I already like you better now.
Even though the Phillies and the Mets are huge rivals.
I know, but it's weird because I grew up a Phillies fan, but even moving to Chicago as a kid, I stayed with the Phillies. But once I got in the business, all that was out. And once I started understanding that, as a young kid, I rooted for the Phillies to beat the Royals in the 1980 World Series. I don't know one person on that Phillies team. I've met a couple of people. I know almost everybody on that Royals team in 1980. I might have been 8 years old, but they were all my friends. They're now all my friends.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And so I hope Philadelphia wins, great, but I don't view the Mets like I did when I was a kid. Now I view the Yankees the way that, because they're the team that we go to Yankee Stadium this year, and it's like, boy, I hope we can win a couple because we usually don't there. There's just something about it. So anyway, but I will say this, I love covering baseball in New York. It's so much fun.
I love the game of baseball. I love sports. I watched March Madness until it got boring because they were all number 1 seeds. Nothing against those young players, but it was like, come on, this March Madness was particularly uneventful. There weren't many upsets. I love baseball. I love football. I particularly like college football. I'm more because there's more at stake, but sports in general, I grew up in a house with, all the women, my mother, both of my grandmothers, huge sports fans. My father couldn't care less, which is kind of the opposite, right? Usually the man is the one that's like, oh, the sports, but no, not my family.
That's great.
All the women. So
I love that.
Yeah, it's a good thing. But this has been a great conversation, Joel. And before we officially end, what's one thing that you didn't get to say today that you'd like to close us out with?
Well, I'll echo words that always ring in my head from a man that was an influence on me and passed away. I think it's been 7 years now. He was the former owner of the Kansas City Royals. He was the former CEO, billionaire CEO of Walmart, a man by the name of David Glass, who passed away at 83 years old in 2020. I like to say that he sold the Royals, passed away a few months later, and then the pandemic hit 2 months after. So I feel like he had an idea of what was going on. But the last interview I ever did with him, he said, and if I'm not quoting exactly, I'm close. He said, everything we do in life is about people. Whether it's baseball or business, everything we do in life is about people. And it's such a universal message. And one, in this world that we're living in, where we're going so fast and we're more careless and everything that we've talked about, I still think if you boil it down to that simple phrase, it's a great starting point.
Hey team, Mary Lou here. Who's number one in football changes from year to year. Fashion trends come and go, same with musical tastes. But leadership skills, they never go out of style. In fact, these days, leadership is an essential survival skill for a world that demands more from us than ever before. To succeed these days, you need to know how to show up for yourself so that you can then do the work you love with people you like the way you want. The Play Your Position Leadership Playbook helps you do this, and it's free. Go to PYPpodcast.com to download your copy today. If being more successful this year, next year, in the 21st century is on your to-do list, get your copy of the Play Your Position Leadership Playbook now. PYPpodcast.com. It's at the top of the page. You can't miss it. That's PYPpodcast.com, and start being more of the leader you are meant to be today. This podcast was produced by Daniel Romeros. Show notes for this episode can be found over at PYPpodcast.com. I'm Mary Lou Kaiser. Thanks for listening.
Here at the Play Your Position podcast, we believe that the road to self-mastery and a life well lived starts with answering the call to leadership. That's when the fun really begins. Send this episode to any friends who might need to hear the inspiration and ideas you heard today. And feel free to rate and review us on your favorite podcast platform.